All right. This is a continuation of yesterday's notes. I believe we did this one and this one yesterday.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yes? Okay. So real quick, we'll do these two to finish this page on up.
I'm being serious.
Okay. All right. This is a cube, a perfect cube. All right. This is a perfect cube. We practiced yesterday of how to use the calculator to find the cube root of something on the calculator. Well, I don't understand why you're laughing. The cube root of 27. You have to understand that 27 was 3x raised to the third power is how they came up with 27x to the third. Okay? And 8, the cube root of 8 is not up here. Does anybody remember from yesterday what the cube root of 8 is? What number can be raised to the, yes, 2 raised to the third power makes 8. Okay? So if we follow our formula here, we're following this one right here. It says, remember, what was the acronym for our signs? SOAP. SOAP. Okay? So the first one is going to be the same as the original problem was. So this one's going to be subtracting. The next one's going to be opposite of whatever that was, so that'll be adding. And the last one is always positive. Always positive. And the rule says just take whatever your first basic factor was and your second basic factor. So that would be 3x. And my basic factor here was 2. And then the rule says take your first factor and now square that one. So 3x squared would make what? 9x squared. Okay. Then we're going to skip to the end. The rule says take your second factor and square him. My second factor was 2, and 2 squared makes 4. And then in the middle term, it says just multiply your first one and your second one. So 3x times 2 would make 6x. And this would be our answer. Good? This one's a step harder. Okay? Make your life easier. Always, always, always be on the lookout for greatest common factor. Always, always, always. Can anybody see what is the greatest common factor here?
8.
8. Does 8 go into 54? You have the calculator. I don't know.
Oh, no.
No? Okay, so not 8. Try 4. See if 4, because I know 4 will go into that. See if 4 goes into that.
No.
No? Okay, so 2. 2 will.
3.
3, but 3 won't go into that.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, so we're going to pull out a 2s. How many s's can I pull out? 2 of them? S squared. So that's going to be my greatest common factor. I'm going to pull out a 2s squared. 16 divided by 2 is going to make 8. I had 5 s's. I'm pulling 2 out, so now I'm going to have 3 s's left inside. 54 divided by 2 is 27. Thank you. I had 2 s's, but I pulled the s's out, so no more s's inside. And now you have to be able to recognize that 8 is a cube and 27 is a cube. What is the basic factor of 8?
2.
2. What is the basic factor of 27?
3.
We did it up here. 3, right? Okay? So now we're going to do SOAP for this. We're going to do SOAP for this, okay? Same as the original problem. So adding. Opposite. Always positive. In the first square, you just get what your basic factors are. What's the basic factor of 8s to the third? If you took the cube root, 2s. What's the the basic factor of 27 if you took the cube root of 27?
3.
Well, there is no s here,
Okay.
so just 3. Right? Cube root of 27 is 3. Then the formula says take your first term and square it. So 2s squared would make what? 2s squared would make 4s squared. Yes, no? And then it says take your second term and square him. 3 squared is going to be 9. And then the middle term says take your first one and your last one and multiply them together. So 2s times 3 is going to make 6s. But don't forget to bring down your original GCF that I had pulled out. This is our answer. Okay? Okay. There will be one of these on tomorrow's quiz. It'll be more of a simpler one, like one of these ones. Good? Y'all are still allowed to talk. Alright, factoring by grouping is the next section. How do you know when you're going to factor by grouping? Because there will be 4 terms. If you have 4 terms, I mean 1, 2, 3, 4. If you have 4 terms, that's the red flag of knowing you're going to do factoring by grouping. Okay? And we actually do factoring by grouping over here when we were going over our homework. When you multiply the first and the last and you split the middle term, and we grouped these two, when we grouped these two, that is factoring by grouping. So you guys already know how to do this, really. So factoring by grouping says group the first 2 and group the last 2. Make sure to leave that negative with the 4. That minus sign stays with the 4 as his sign. Okay? What's the greatest common factor out of this group here?
Z squared.
Z squared. And pull that to the outside. So I had 3 z's, I'm pulling 2 out. So 1z. 5z squared, I'm pulling the z squared out, so I still have 5. What's the greatest common factor out of this group?
4.
Negative 4. And if I divide out the negative 4, I'm left with z. Negative 20 divided by negative 4, negative divided by negative makes a positive 5. Remember, these should always match. If they do not match, then you have done something wrong. Okay? So the matching guy is one of your factors. Where do I get my other factor?
Z squared minus 4.
The z squared and the minus 4, the GCFs that I had pulled out. But guess what? That's not even factored completely down. Look at that. What do you notice about that?
We can take a Z out of each one.
I don't want to do that.
We need to get rid of the square.
Okay, we have a z squared minus 4. Difference of squares, right?
Oh.
Uh-huh. Okay, this is a perfect square. This is a perfect square. Okay, so this is going to be z plus, what's the square root of 4? 2. And then the other one has to be z minus, because remember it has to add to 0, and that's why I don't have that middle term anymore. And then bring down this guy. So you always have to be skeptical of, am I really done? Have I really factored it all the way down, as far down as I can? Okay? We have 1, 2, 3, 4 terms, so I know I'm going to group the first 2, group the second 2. What's the greatest common factor out of this section here?
X squared.
X squared, so let's pull that out. So I had 3 x's, I'm pulling 2 out, so I still have 1 inside. And then it'll just be the 2 because I'm pulling the x squared to the outside. What's the greatest common factor here?
-9.
I'm going to pull out a -9, good, because I know that I need my signs to match here. And so the only way that's going to happen is if I pull out a -9. So that's just going to leave me with x. 18 divided by -9 gives me the -2 that I needed it to be for these to match. Okay. So the matchy guy is one of my factors. Where do I get my other factor from?
From the 2 greatest common factors.
Okay, so x squared and -9. Have I factored him all the way down? Rebecca says no, because these are perfect squares. These are a difference of squares here, okay? Think about taking the square root and the square root. What's the square root of 9?
3.
Remember, 1 has to be positive, 1 has to be negative, so it adds to 0, and that's why I don't have that middle term anymore. Final answer. Questions about that? Okay. Factoring in quadratic form is the last section of factoring. And I don't believe that I'm going to put any of these on your quiz for tomorrow, okay? These are just more of a kind of specialty one that if you happen to notice it, bless you, then bless you. That would make me happy. Okay. So 16 and 81. Is everybody okay with the fact that those are perfect squares? 16 and 81, okay? So this technically is a difference of squares. It's just a really advanced difference of squares. So I'm going to imagine taking the square root of these. Okay? Remember, a difference of squares factors down to 1 being plus, 1 being minus. That's why I don't have my middle term. What's the square root of 16x to the 4th?
4x squared.
4x squared. Good. And it should be okay that 4x squared times 4x squared would make 16x to the 4th. Right? And what's the square root of 81? 9. One of these will factor down more. Which one will factor down more?
4x squared plus 9.
Nope, this one actually will not factor down more. This one will. Hi.